Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are in Glacial Lake playing as the forces of the Vampire Counts against the forces of Chaos. This matchup is one that used to be basically all about the Mortis engine. You basically brought a Mortis engine, you brought a bunch of chaff to protect the Mortis engine and some anti-large troops as Vampire Counts, and as Chaos you basically brought a horde of Chosen and some monsters to try to bash the Mortis engine. And that was basically it. If you killed the Mortis engine, you won. If you didn't, you lost. And that was basically the gist of the engagement. But with the nerf to the Mortis engine, forcing it to stay in combat to do its drain effect, it's become a lot less workable. So I was trying something new here with the cheaper, new and improved sort of cheaper Graveguard with great weapons, and seeing if I could make it work. And unfortunately, in all my excitement to use great weapons and try an alternate build, I completely forgot to bring light cav, bats, anything like that. And definitely paying the price almost instantly. As you can see here, my opponent decided to go very heavy on the light cap, and it is going to be a major pain. Now, going over this build real quick, obviously you need some anti-large, and so I did bring the Red Duke, who I think is great. Kolek's a pretty common sight in this matchup. He's pretty strong, honestly. Against the Vampire Counts, he can really lay the smackdown on most of their troops, and so the Red Duke with the LC can make him a much easier target for your anti-large monstrosities. Foe Seeker, of course, makes him mobile. You still have your usual assortment of spells, and you do have a breath attack, which can be very helpful at nuking down blobs of Chaos Infantry, which, of course, you will struggle to deal with otherwise. Alongside him, two Terrorgeists are providing a bit of an additional anti-large armor piercing contingent. Of course, these guys are very, very solid against large. Not very good against much of anything else, but they do have breath attacks, which once again can be used to nuke down formations of infantry. Front line, bunch of Graveguard with great weapons, as I discussed earlier. But quite frankly, a bit of a mistake. I just simply didn't bring any zoning tools. I didn't even have chaff to zone these guys out, and honestly, just a few zombies here would have been helpful, or some skeleton warriors or something like that, or even vanilla Graveguard. So a big mistake here on my part, but it is what it is. They are backed by two corpse swords with unholy lodestones, who are providing that healing aura as well as vigor mortis, which of course is a +5 melee attack and melee defense boost. So a very solid AoE buff, and definitely helpful for the pretty bad stats of Vampire Count units. Graveguard with great weapons don't have great stats to begin with. They are boosted by a 10 bonus versus infantry, but honestly still, 24 melee attack is just so pitiful. 34 melee attack is barely better than Empire Swordsmen. It's on par with Bleak Swords, for reference, which is really, really bad. Regardless, for my opponent, you can see a whole bunch of Marauder Horsemen, and a very wide build, and honestly this is a bit of an interesting composition. He did bring Archeon on foot. He's got Burning Head to deal with chaff. He's got Cascading Fire Cloaks, very cheap, very lightweight Archeon build, which is odd. Archeon's pretty surprisingly tanky, and like this on foot, I can't really snipe him. Like honestly, Red Duke will knock him around, and the Terrorgeists are terrible against normal foot troops. So this is a very interesting take on things for my opponent. The front line of Chaos Warriors is definitely good for soaking up and charges and kind of holding the line. So Chaos Marauders on the flank for peripheral support, and a whole bunch of Chaos Marauders with great weapons, with the main anti-armor contingent and anti-monster contingent made up of Marauder Horsemen. My opponent also did bring two Exalted Heroes, which I think is a little bit of an odd pick. But nonetheless, definitely these guys can dish out some hurt. They've got pretty high, you can see, melee attack of 65, decent melee defense, 100 armor, bronze shields, and their horse is definitely not bad. So things are definitely looking a little interesting. You can see my opponent quickly, after throwing a few volleys into Graveguard, which is kind of being compensated for with the Corpse Guard's proximity. My opponent then shifts target onto the Red Duke. I'm trying to get an engagement here, but I'm just not able to come to grips. I do believe there's actually been a little bit of friendly fire from the throwing axes. That's why they're low on HP, because I certainly haven't made connection yet. However, my opponent here definitely doing a little bit of an interesting switcheroo, kind of moving out his Chaos Warriors out of the way to provide a clean line of engagement for his Chaos Marauders with great weapons. And I think that's definitely a pretty cool maneuver, but I'm not entirely sure it's what you want, because Chaos Marauders with great weapons should probably be coming in on the flank against the Graveguard, to be quite honest, at least in my opinion. Another interesting thing here that my opponent is doing, with his 5 Marauder Horsemen, instead of focusing the Corpse Guard, which is a pretty easy target, he is focusing on my Graveguard with great weapons, who honestly, you can pick them apart later over time. Get rid of the Corpse Guards, who are providing that AoE Vigor Mortis aura. Up in the sky, the Red Duke, as well as his goon squad of Terrorgeists, are sitting around being sad and not being able to contribute, which is a little unfortunate, but you can see the Graveguard diving in, and they are going to start taking these guys to Pound Town with that healing aura, with the benefits of their raw damage output. These guys hit for almost 50 damage a hit against very lightly armored troops here. They will just destroy these Chaos Marauders. In the ground, in the meantime, we are diving in, going after the Exalted Heroes. I know that I can't snipe Archeon really on foot, so we're just going to focus on the Exalted Heroes. You can see, unfortunately, one of the Terrorgeists getting snagged there, which is going to force my hand. I'm going to dive in with my full Goon squad, and we immediately cast LC on him, and we're going to make him regret being born. And you can see the Exalted Hero just having a terrible time. All these hatchets are flying in, but really not quite doing enough damage, and my opponent here being zoned out by the Skeleton Warrior summon, and not really chipping away at this Corpse Card. He's actually wasting his ammo on the Skeleton Warrior, so a bit of micro mistake. You always want to be on top of your micro, making sure to conserve and get the most out of your ammunition with the Marauder Horsemen. Now these Graveguard definitely being annihilated, but everywhere else you can see this entire route of my opponent's front line. All these Marauders with the Grey Weapons dead. The Chaos Marauders routed. Over here, Chaos Warriors bogged down fighting Graveguard with Grey Weapons, not really where they want to be, and honestly, the Marauder Horsemen are starting to run out of ammo. You can see over here they're just being zoned out by Skeletons. The Exalted Hero here has been routed off on 500 HP, just terrible shape. Got immediately destroyed. The second Exalted Hero getting gooned out by the Terrorgeist. Terrorgeist with his region, honestly, holding strong in this pit fight here. Only Archaon can really lay the smackdown on him and the throwing axes, but that's just not enough. There's honestly, I think a big chunk of the problem here is that the bulk of the different Terrorgeists and the Dragons actually shielding them mutually from the axes. My opponent didn't quite have the best focus fire. Regardless, though, things are continuing at a pace, and of course I can't do much against the Marauder Horsemen. I throw breath attacks at him, killing a few here and there. I try to zone him out with zombies, but only so much you can do. I have at this point lost an entire unit of Graveguard with Grey Weapons. I think, actually maybe not. They're still here. They're 19 models. You can see they actually achieved 55 kills despite being focused pretty heavily. So these guys definitely can lay the smackdown, especially for a 900 gold unit. But against cheap units like Chaos Warriors and Chaos Marauders, they'll do really well. Corpse Guard here pulls back, providing that constant healing aura, constant buff. You can see Skeleton Warriors here once again moving to zone out these Marauder Horsemen. They won't really be able to kill many, if any of them. But once again, giving the Red Duke the opportunity he needs to stay in there and do damage. My opponent here trying to get this Exalted Hero into the fray. Not going to happen. The Terrorgeists are so good against large. If we look at their bonus versus large, I think it's at least 25. It might be 35. It's 35. Holy heck! It puts them up over 60 melee attacks. So the Terrorgeist is hitting the Exalted Hero over half the time on the charge. It's pretty crazy. Well, on the charge, it's hitting even more. So the Exalted Hero once again being broken off. And my opponent's army at this point is disintegrating. And this definitely. I was a bit surprised by this. The simple fact that these guys are so tanky, they've just been absorbing so much damage throughout this entire game, and still, despite all that pounding, despite the hatches flying in on the Red Duke, we're able to zone things out and kind of survive. Over here, I'd simply left the Graveguard out in the open. Bit unfortunate. This was a bit of a problem for me. My army got very sort of disparate and spread out. I did actually pull the Corpse Carts back to consolidate a line around or pocket around my Red Duke and his Terrorgeists. But that did leave these Graveguard out over here. Kind of left them out to dry against these Chaos Marauders. My opponent does try to get a cast here with a Burning Hand. It's going to roast these Skeleton Warriors, but they're a summoned unit. I don't really care. I do hit Archaon here, and start surrounding him, start beating him down with this horde of Graveguard. And Archaon, with his monstrous melee defense, honestly doesn't really care about these guys. They basically have no chance to hit him. It's almost literally, I think, a minimal chance to hit, but you know, some chip damage over time will start bringing him down. In the meantime, we can start gooning out other troops. So you can see the Red Duke diving in over there. Over here, we're kind of consolidating our infantry mob, and my opponent is really starting to run low on hatchets. Over here, he is focusing on this Graveguard, but you can see these guys already out of ammo. Exalted Hero almost dead. These guys almost out of ammo. These guys, and plus with the model losses, they obviously do not have the raw damage output they would need. Now, over here, you can see we do pick apart these Chaos Warriors. We're going to rout them. Skeleton Warriors here disintegrating, but we are going to lose those Graveguard over there, unfortunately. But it's all okay. It's all good because we still have this very reasonable pocket. It's centered around these Corpse Cards with our Holy Lodestone, which will just be healing these guys constantly. We still have a little bit of Winds of Magic. You can see we pop Foeseeker. We're going in here on Archaon. We're actually able to sort of dive him here and start trying to snipe the Lord of the End Times out. And we don't even have to cast a debuff on him, nothing like that. And Archaon actually starts going down here. Cast King Firecloak, trying to save his bacon, but really it's not enough. At this point, my opponent's army will simply shatter. This was an odd matchup in the sense that I was honestly surprised that I came out winning. My opponent's build, I think, was surprisingly solid, at least against what I brought. I definitely think this sort of build is actually viable. Maybe not ideal, but again, say if your opponent goes, say, Chosen Heavy, you can hit him with breath attacks and then buff up your own troops with the Red Duke's Vinehild's Dance Macabre, as well as the Corpse Cards, and you can potentially chew through those Chaos Warriors or the Chosen fairly effectively. One thing I would definitely recommend, though, is bring some bats. bring some zoning tools. Had I had a few bats here, they would have made a huge difference against these Marauder Horsemen. Even though it probably wouldn't have raked in a bunch of kills, they could have really bought me some time. Even some zombies, anything, just to buy you some time against these Marauder Horsemen. So perhaps that's a better idea, but I think it's reasonably viable. Graveyard have gotten cheaper. They hit like trucks. That's honestly the redeeming features, that they hit really hard compared to, they hit about 20% harder than greatswords again, or they hit, well, it's 50 versus 40 or 41, so they hit about, I don't know, 25% harder than greatswords, something like that. Greatswords hit 20% weaker, I guess. I don't know which uses a point of reference, but regardless, they do much better. They can do a lot of damage, and as you saw there, they eviscerated those Chaos Marauders. They tore through the Chaos Warriors, and really did me proud there. For my opponent's build, like I said, interesting choice. I'm not a big fan of Archeon, honestly, even foot. I just don't think he's that useful. But an interesting concept. I think you'd be better off with Kolek. I don't think this is not viable as a build, but I do think you'd be better off bringing an extra anti-large unit in there, and bringing Kolek, perhaps, instead of the hero squad. Not entirely sure where you'd have to cut corners exactly, but honestly, you could probably get Kolek and a Shaggoths or something just by cutting out that hero squad. And maybe a handful of Marauders, or one of the Marauder throwing axes, something like that. I'd assume you could get Kolek in there. And that would give you some decent AP anti-large, and you'd still have that awesome presence of throwing axes and all that sort of stuff. One of the other small things I do still think Chosen in general are a better choice to go, but definitely, I think this is viable. One other little tidbit I would mention is the fact that while Chaos Marauders with throwing axes are not bad, I found that often either Horsemasters or even the normal Horsemen can be better just because of the extra range. The extra range can make quite a bit of a difference when you're trying to deal with Mortis engines, when you're trying to chip away at enemy troops. Generally, Vampire Counts don't have that much armor. It's more about just hitting them. Obviously, if you want to try to shut down Blood Knights, that's about the only case where I think the axes have well, I guess it kind of depends, but if you're trying to crack armor and Graveguard, in which case you might want these. But I do think that there's quite a good argument to be made, at least to mix and match with normal Marauder Horsemen or Horsemasters. But regardless, good game to my opponent here. Shy XQW, I don't know. But regardless, good game. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, anything like that, be sure to share it, and I will respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.